Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, inside Transformation Conference, we go behind the scenes of the fifth installment of our biannual event, Transformation Conference, which took place in Stockholm yesterday, actually, when we record this. We will hear key takeaways and listen to reactions from people who participated both on and off stage. We will hear from Sandra Roos, Vice President and Sustainability at Kappahl, Outi Luukko, CEO and founder of Rester, and Sarah Arts, Head of Marketing and Communications at the Stockholm-based fashion brand Asket. My name is Konrad, Editor-in-Chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind, and I'm here with my dear colleague Johan Magnusson. Johan, how does it feel today, the day after the conference?
It feels really nice. We had a great experience in Helsinki, so the expectations were quite high for Stockholm, and it matched it and exceeded it, I would say.
I think so too. A bit tired today. As per tradition now, we concluded the conference season with a dinner at the beautiful Finnish embassy in Stockholm, courtesy of their press secretary Elna Nikinen Andersson, who is kind enough to invite us there. So we had a beautiful evening as well with the speakers and participants. Of course, I did the most of the conference on stage, so it's hard for me to tell what it felt like in the audience. Maybe we can start there, Johan. Was there any murmurs in the audience that I could not experience from the event?
I would say that the speaker list was quite impressive. So people came there with quite high expectations. And of course, they were all silent while we had the keynotes and the panel discussions. But we also had a break. And then you could feel this atmosphere in the room, like a lot of smart, influential people gathered at the same place. So, of course, it was a mingle that fear of missing out if you weren't there.
Absolutely. I love that you say that. And I think, we've been touching on this before, but the sort of relevance for this event has really increased this year. And we can tell by the number of participants. We have 150 people on place on site this year. It's double compared to last year. So people are really resonating with the topics of the new EU legislations for fashion. What will it mean? How can we tackle recycling? What will this mean for brands, small and large? So I think there's a real kind of attention to these issues that we've been talking about now for a few years within the industry. And I think that kind of shows in the conference yesterday. And I agree. I'm very proud of the lineup of speakers we had yesterday, and looking forward sharing some of these conversations in our podcast later on.
And what about you? You were on stage most of the time, or right next to the stage. What were your feelings?
My feeling was that people were listening, as you said. I think it was a really quiet room. People paid attention, and it's always the worst part of hosting this conference is interrupting the conversations people have in the break. You can really tell by if it's a relevant conference that if people are really talking to each other in the break, and interrupting that and continuing with the program is always kind of heartbreaking, because that's what we want to do, right? With the conference, we want to spark these conversations.
We need to extend the break from a quarter to 1 hour next year.
Yeah, I think so. But that's also why we hosted the roundtable sessions afterwards. So after the conference, select, the speakers, but also an extended kind of group of people from within the industry were gathered to continue the conversation. By the reactions I got, people really enjoyed those conversations as well, and they were really fruitful to people. And again, one of the other main themes, or one of the other main things we want to achieve with this conference is bring people together from different industries. So we have people from the tech industry, meeting people in the fashion industry. We have people from the VC, venture capital industry, talking about how they invest in new technologies for the fashion industry, and right now giving all the talk about the digital product passports and what that might mean for the fashion industry. There's also now software developers kind of flocking to the fashion industry. And of course, the day started with an update on the EU regulations by Mauro Scaglia, the director of Euratex. He was with us in Helsinki as well, so very happy that he came back. And that kind of, I think it gave us kind of a through line throughout the day. So it gave us something that people kind of could fall back on, and sort of all the rest of the discussions, whether we talked to these innovation companies that are doing recycling, whether we talked about to the sustainability experts of the big brands or the VCs, we all kind of fell back on this notion that there is legislation coming, the fashion industry need to change, and there is this sense of urgency to it.
And it's coming soon. A lot of designers present there, they're a bit stressed now because it's still yet to be decided what the legislation will look like. And then I had a long conversation with Mauro after after the event, and among many other things, we spoke about the fact that we have the elections next summer.
Right.
So this might change quite a lot if there's a new parliament going to rule after the summer next year. But yeah, the designers, they are of course planning for 2025 now, where we expect the new legislation to happen. So and they still don't know. They're a bit It's a bit unknown how to deal with it, and what will be the results in their daily operations.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of uncertainty for sure, and just that notion, does what you just mentioned, I think is just testament to these are two worlds clashing right now. We have the legislators in Brussels thinking about how to change the fashion industry. They don't think about. I think kind of the knowledge about the fashion industry is low, which is a testament to the lack of kind of the lack of lobbyists and people representing the fashion industry in Brussels. So when the EU says, well, let's do this now in a year, especially designers, as you mentioned, they're like, no, we're already working on 4 seasons ahead. So hence the stress. And actually, Sandra Roos, vice president of sustainability at Kappahl, she mentioned this. You had a chance to talk to Sandra off stage after the conference. What was your impression speaking with Sandra? What do you think about her?
We were, of course, super happy to have her joining our event. She's a big player in the Swedish and Scandinavian fashion scene. Mainly, I would say, given her science and research background, and of course, the industry needs to look at science in order to improve, just like many other industries. So she has a lot of credibility there, given her vast background in the fields.
I actually have a lot of respect for her to making that pivot, going from. I mean, she was really. It still is, of course, but when she was working with RISE and these organizations as a researcher, she was, I think, the most highly regarded fashion sustainability researcher in Sweden. So to be in that position and go to a commercial player, that's a lot of risk in terms of your own credibility in a way. But as she talks about it, she's like, I was done. I knew what needed to be happen. I had done my research. Now I want to put it to the test.
Exactly, because it's in many ways it's when you join such a commercial company, and also quite a very big one, a fashion chain. It's what it is. It's a retailer, a fashion chain that has been known for as many other fast fashion player, but as many others are now going through a transformation. And much thanks to Sandra's work, she's been there for a few years now, and it takes some time to implement, of course. The transformation and changes in the organizations and such.
All right, let's listen to it. Here's your conversation with Sandra Roos, Vice President Sustainability at Kappahl, off stage at the Transformation Conference.
We're here at the Transformation Conference outside of Stockholm. You've been on stage. How was it? What did you talk about?
We talked about mostly maybe the transformation and the technology part that is needed. And we talked about traceability in the supply chain, and we talked about the extended producer responsibility. And also a bit about management, I think, how important it is that top management is involved in sustainability, and that all senior executives are taking the responsibility to drive sustainability in their functions.
And how do you work with that particular topic at Kappahl?
Well, at Kappahl, I'm fortunate enough to sit in the executive management team, which means that my colleagues are the CFO, the CEO, and all the vice president for product development, for sales, etc. And it's really, I mean, sustainability is about all the functions in a company, and we all need to collaborate. We have to design clothes from better fabrics, and we have to have suppliers supplying those better fabrics. So it's really a teamwork.
And a lot of work we heard on stage. Can you take us through how these next few years will be? Especially for you being such a big player.
Yeah, I think, I mean, from my point of view, I think the EU regulations is a support for me, because it means that the whole industry needs to change at the same time. So all the fears about losing competitiveness, etc., and losing profitability, that is not so scary anymore, since everyone has to do the same thing at the same time. So the whole industry needs to change, but it is a big change, and it is about selling products with high quality, selling products that are transparent, building up infrastructure for a circular business model. And if we do that together, then we might actually have a chance to save clothes from being burnt in the combustible waste, but instead garments that can be reused will be reused and eventually recycled and recovered.
A very good saying during the talk was that you might be competitors, the fashion brands might be competitors in terms of style, while when it comes to sustainability, finally we might see the industry come together moving forward. Do you agree? Is that the most important step going forward?
Yeah, definitely. Not one single brand can make this change alone, because it's about finding suppliers that can deliver the new sustainable products, and it's about teaching customers and making them mature enough to try the circular business models, and also to care for garments, and knowing about the quality of a garment regardless of price. Because I also think that maybe people treat a shirt from Gant and Kappahl in different ways. Because if you bought it for 400 kronor, you don't treat it the way you should. But if you buy it for 1,000 kronor, then you treat it in another way.
And your talk together with Jessica from Gant will be released as a special episode of our podcast series later this fall. What are your next steps at Kappahl moving forward?
Immediately now, we are onboarding all our suppliers into the traceability system. So we have already done a pilot with our denim suppliers. So all our denim you can now find on our web page, where you can see the supply chain all down to fiber. So you can see the weaver, the spinner, the ginner of the fibers, etc. But we will do this on all our products.
All right, that was Sandra Roos, Vice President Sustainability at Kappahl, speaking to Johan off stage at the Transformation Conference. All right, so one big topic, of course, is the notion of recycling. So, and that's why I feel it was so good to have so many Finnish participants and speakers with us this year, because of course Finland is way ahead. It's only until 2025 that the mandates apply for all of Europe, where all the municipalities in the EU will have to collect all textile waste from consumers and companies. But Finland is already ahead. I think they started last year. And we had two speakers on stage working with various types of recycling technologies. We had Outi Luukko from Rester and Olli Kekkonen from Nordic Bioproducts Group. So two Finnish speaker and one Swedish. We also had Angeline Elfström, business development manager at Once More, a recycling project run by the big waste giant Södra.
Yeah, and also in our conversation, I asked what it's like for a player working with recycling in a country that's actually now a forerunner in the field.
All right, let's hear it. Here's Outi Luukko, CEO and founder of the Finnish recycling company Rester.
What can you say about Rester? How would you describe it?
Well, at Rester we have our mission is to keep the materials in circulation, and by that I mean that we wish to have purpose for each material type. So the compositions are so various that we want to find a usage for each different kind of feedstock stream. And this is maybe the biggest mission in our work. But also what we do is to take care of business-to-business textiles at the end of the life cycle. So we take them in and sort them and produce the material back to new fiber that can be used for industrial usage. And I would still maybe add that it's not about the opening process itself what is interesting. The interesting part is that the understanding of the textiles, that's most important. So we know what can be used and where it can be used and what are the features that are expected to be had.
We've had you on stage at Transformation Conference both in Helsinki and now Stockholm. What did you talk about?
Well, in Helsinki the content was a bit different having the speech, but here in Stockholm we had a very interesting conversation, and of course our dear partner Södra as well sitting beside me here representative and we discussed about the scenery of recycling. It was a very short conversation, so I think we all would have had a lot more to say, and also maybe it would be interesting to cover a little bit of the future topics, how we see that this is evolving. That would have been one thing that certainly we will have conversations later on.
Finland is a true front runner when it comes to recycling. For those who don't know, what can you say? It's mandatory with textile recycling as part of the system, and
yes, in Finland we have been kind of forerunners for making this systemic change. So we have been taking in the textiles further or before than it was mandatory in EU. So that part covered, check. But what is not covered is the end usage, and this is something that I want to underline, that keeping the materials in circulation, we do need the industrial level operators who will then be committed to use the materials in their production, whatever it is. It might be different kind of applications. So that's something that I strongly recommend to do, because the companies who are involved now and are committed for the big transition, they will be the winners. That's it.
If we talk about you and Rester, what are your next steps?
Our next steps are, of course, to scale up, and we have been also growing our capacity. So at this point, we have 11,000 tons of annual capacity. So, and we are practically the only and the biggest operator for fiber opening in Northern Europe. So in that sense, I would say that we would be very likely to cover the whole Scandinavian and Baltic countries at the moment what comes to new fiber production. And this is also something that I feel and think that we should think about ourselves as one entity, as one market area. We are so small, and if we want to make the change from all the production processes that have been the previous way to do it, we are in such a big changing process that we have to unite and we have to collaborate.
All right, that was Outi Luukko, CEO of Rester. All right, so we mentioned before kind of the murmurs in the audience and all the discussion that happened, and I think we wanted to kind of bring in a voice fresh from the audience, and you decided to talk to Sandra Roos, which is head of marketing and communications at Asket, which I think is an interesting brand. I mean, they were quick to RSVP to this conference. Asket is a kind of a forerunner in trying to make fashion in a very different type of way. Can you describe Asket to someone who doesn't know what it is?
They've been around for a few years now. I think more years than you might expect.
Yeah.
I don't know when they were starting, but it's of course based on
It's
wardrobe
6 or 7 years or something.
Yeah. It's based on wardrobe essentials. So basically, their men's line, for instance, will be full, so to say, next year. So they will not launch any new products. At least that's what they say for the men's line. While they recently launched a women's line as well, which of course will expand over the years. They're also a front runner.
I'm sorry. I just have to comment on that. I think it's people don't understand how bold it is for a fashion brand to say we are not launching any new products. It really flies in the face of how the whole industry works, and kind of it's a testament to how Asket is doing things differently.
Yeah, and it's up for proof now because, of course, they have investors and they want return of investment, of course, but perhaps they need to expand to new markets and new consumer groups instead of selling newness, so to say, selling new launches just for the sake of it. So I think they're rely quite heavily on the essentials that they have and to refine them and to like relaunch the Oxford shirt or such. So they're still going to grow. And also, of course, they just opened Restore, which Sarah will mention in the interview, where they have gathered old pieces which has been restored and is now available for sale as well, just like many other brands.
That's actually a big topic we should come back to in the podcast. We met several companies yesterday that are working on different kinds of resell platforms, for instance. 2 of them came from Finland. There's other players coming out of Sweden. I really feel, and I talked to Jessica Woodmar from Gant, who's also the speaker on stage. She said she had gone through, it was plus 20 different types of resale platforms, meaning like tech companies or startups wanting to sell different types of resale platforms to her. So this is really, I mean, there is some estimates I read somewhere that like, the resale market's going to be, worth 60% of the whole fashion industry by 2030 or something. I think that's a rough estimate, but surely resale is on the rise.
Yeah, and it's quite challenging now, of course, for the brands when the generation growing up now, they don't consume. They only buy secondhand or go to resale websites. So it's it's not a coincidence that we see all the rise for all these startups, of course.
Right. And speaking of this, I just feel like transformation conference and kind of like this conversation going through some of the impressions we had, it just becomes like a to-do list of upcoming episodes and stories we need to follow up on, because there was just so much being mentioned that we need to create research projects on at Scandinavian Mind. But back to Sarah, I think the Asket is also interesting because they've had their own projects around traceability, kind of way ahead of many others. Now, obviously, traceability is going to be a huge part of of the EU legislations, and that's why we need to implement these digital product passports that we're talking about. But I'm sure Sarah, in your interview, talked about the traceability project as well.
She sure did. Almost exactly 3 years ago, they launched the so-called impact receipt, which she will explain in the interview. But it's been tricky. They've been struggling with making it happen because perhaps they were a bit early when they released the plans. So it was, I wouldn't say it was only an idea, but it was like a concept. And in order to make it happen, and they realized a lot of struggles, and they've been through a lot. And of course, the pandemic didn't make it easier. But now, 3 years later, this November, we'll see the launch of the impact receipt. And it's quite groundbreaking, or it's very groundbreaking, I would say. And let's hear Sarah explain more about it. What's your impressions after the conference, and why is it important for you to be here?
Well, the apparel industry has far-reaching environmental and social effects, and despite that, it's one of the most unregulated industries. So it's really promising to see that the European Parliament is making moves to regulate the industry. First and foremost, I was here to understand what some of those regulations are, and they're far-reaching, really interesting, and start initial discussions of how they might come into effect and how the standards might look.
We will also release several of the speeches and panel talks as special podcast episodes throughout the fall. For Asket, you've just opened a quite special store. Can you tell us more?
Yes.
On this topic as well, yeah.
Of course, absolutely. So we opened our second physical retail space, and it is entirely dedicated to restored and used Asket garments. So one of the discussions today was around circularity and lifetime longevity and potential long-term solutions, be that resale or recycling. And for us, the restore is a step in the right direction. So in 2001, we introduced the Revival program. So we've been collecting used Asket garments from our customers for 3 years now. We've been working with Fabrikarna, which is a charity that repairs and refreshes garments. And 3 years down the line, we had enough garments to be able to open the restore on Bundegarten 48 on Södermalm.
You also mentioned before that this fall sees a very special launch, which has taken you so much time and effort. It's called the Impact Receipt, and we can provide a teaser here for what's about to launch in November. What can you say about it?
Of course. So as I mentioned earlier, the apparel industry has a huge environmental impact, and as a society, we've lost connection with actually what goes into making our garments and the effects that has. So at Asket, we really want to reconnect people with that dissociation, and for people to understand every purchase they make, that it also leaves an environmental cost, not just a hole in your wallet, so to speak. So in 2021, we introduced the concept of the impact receipt. So along with a financial receipt for your purchase, we wanted to introduce an environmental receipt. And it's taken us a number of years to be able to get the data, collect that information, and have the right rigor across all of our garments and across our entire operation. But this November, we'll finally be able to share that impact. So the carbon emissions, water use and energy use for every single one of our garments, as well as our business operations. So when you do buy something from us, you'll receive 2 receipts, your regular transaction receipt and also the impact receipt. Ultimately, what we want to do is get people to understand and acknowledge the inherent value in a garment, and nudge people into valuing their garments, keeping them hold of them for longer, and understanding the true inherent value in those.
Can you pick out one of the challenges of creating this concept out of many, I assume?
Of course. I mean, the number one challenge is, of course, acquiring the data. So for those of you who are familiar with the apparel industry, it's an incredibly complex supply chain. Everything from extracting raw materials from farms, spinning the yarn, creating the fabric, the cut and sew stage. There's a different player involved at every step along the way. The apparel industry is inherently opaque, and many companies don't have that sort of visibility. We've been working on that visibility since we started, and now we've been working with all of those different touch points to get the information that we needed. But it's a lot of data to gather and to calculate and then summarize in a receipt.
I can imagine.
All right, that was Sarah Arts from the Stockholm-based fashion brand Asket. All right, Johan, lots more to talk about. Kudos to Asket for doing the traceability projects, but it kind of also underscores that these are huge projects that the whole industry need to tackle. And it goes across the entire kind of value chain, upstream with the supply chain of manufacturing and sourcing the raw materials, all the way out to end of life responsibility for fashion brands. How will consumers either repurpose or recycle garments? It's really a daunting task, and kind of that scope in and of itself kind of proves the need for a transformation conference. What do you think?
If you ask me, it should be a monthly event. because it's so much to talk about.
I'm too tired today to think of this as a monthly event.
In 2024, we will launch it as a monthly event.
But for sure, and I mean, this is something to stay tuned about in the Scandinavian Mind platform. There is obviously a need for the industry to absorb knowledge about what's happening, and that is something we want to be part of. We want to be in service of the industry, giving them knowledge and insights, and we are working on a couple of projects of how to do that in a more recurring way. So not just a couple of events every year, and not just kind of the news feed on our website, but more of an insights operation. But we'll get back to that.
Yeah, and of course, it's also that it's not only for the 150 people in the audience yesterday. We've released a bunch of podcasts with the talks and the keynotes from the Helsinki edition. So if a listener gets curious, it's just to keep on scrolling in our podcast feed to get even more insights from Helsinki.
For sure. So if there's FOMO, go back to the Helsinki event and relaunch that, and then stay tuned for more content in the podcast and feeds coming up later this fall. So what else do we have to plug? Of course, Beauty Innovation turned 12 this week. We have done 3 months of Beauty Innovation Insights newsletters. We'll actually do a longer episode on Beauty Innovation next week. But Johan, just short, how's it been doing this for now 12 consecutive weeks?
Yeah, what can I say? A lot of insights. So I've learned a lot as well, and I hope the readers have as well, of course. So it's been a struggle to create the right amount of content and the right level of content every week, but also very fun, and I hope that it's been appreciated, which we know because we've received really good feedback.
Yeah, a ton of positive feedback, and that's also why we're confident of now when we move into September, the Beauty Innovation Insights newsletter will move from the early access free edition into a paid subscription. So if you are working in the beauty industry and want to get the latest insights about new technologies and developments, you have to subscribe to Beauty Innovation. There's a great offer on site right now, 20% off the first year if you sign up, because starting next week, Beauty Innovation is going to be a paid newsletter. I'm telling you, it's going to be worth it. If you work in the beauty industry, you can spare 30 euros a month on this, significantly less if you use the 20% off. So go to scandinavianmind.com/beauty innovation to sign up. And of course, while you're there, do sign up to my weekly newsletter with my weekly column called Observations. You'll find that on scandinavianmind.com as well. Johan, it's been a blast doing Transformation Conference. I'm totally beat. I'm looking forward to the weekend. How about you?
Yeah, let's do Oslo in September. No, I'm kidding. We won't make it a monthly event. It's still the fact that it's only arranged like once or twice a year. It's a part of the success, I would say.
Exactly. But speaking of Oslo, I will actually be in Oslo next week, Friday, September 8th. Now that you mention it, I will be hosting not an entire conference, but helping the design brand Minus talking about sustainability and circularity in the furniture industry during Designers Saturdays, kind of their design week over there at Oslo. I'm really looking forward to that. So I will actually be in Oslo. If you're around, shout out, give me a DM or send me an email. I'd love to meet up. All right, Johan, this has been the Scandinavian Mind podcast. Quite enjoyed this week. Thank you so much for being our man in the audience yesterday, and do enjoy the weekend.
Bye.